All right, ready for another deep dive? Today we're going to try to decode something pretty fascinating. Those subtle signs that a woman might be interested, even before she actually says anything.
Yeah, we're talking about those hints and clues that go way beyond just a simple, hey, I like you.
Exactly, like a secret language of attraction, right?
I like that, a secret language.
So we've got a really interesting source that breaks down all sorts of behaviors, from body language to how someone acts online. It's a lot to unpack.
It is, but let's start with something pretty basic. Proximity and touch.
Okay, so imagine you're at a party and you notice a woman kind of keeps finding reasons to be near you.
Right, she might be laughing a little louder when you're around, or maybe she'll accidentally bump into you.
Ah, those little accidents.
Yeah, touch can be, a pretty powerful way to connect with someone. And there's actually research that shows that even a quick touch can make people feel more attracted to each other.
So it's not just about being physically close, it's more like intentionally making contact, right?
Exactly. And the type of touch can make a difference too. Like a light touch on the arm could be friendly, but if she lingers a little longer, maybe touches your hand, it might mean something more.
I never really thought about the different types of touch like that. But how can you tell if someone's just naturally touchy-feely, versus actually being interested?
That's a good point. You got to look at the whole picture. Is she making eye contact? Does her body language seem open and inviting? Is she kind of mirroring your movements, touching you back?
So it's more about a combination of things, not just one single action.
Right, exactly. And this is where things get even more interesting because beyond those initial physical cues, there's a whole other level of how her actions, both online and offline, can show what she's really thinking.
Okay, so let's talk about actions. Our source talks about how women will often remember specific details you've shared, almost like a little test, like your favorite drink or a funny story you told.
Right, she's showing you that she was listening, that what you say matters to her. We all remember the things that are important to us.
Oh, absolutely. It definitely feels good when someone remembers those little things.
Yeah.
But couldn't that just be, good manners? Or what if she just has a really good memory?
Sure, some people are just good at remembering things. But if a woman consistently remembers stuff you've said, especially tiny details that most people would forget, it could be a sign that she's trying to impress you.
So it's less about the actual memory and more about what's behind it, like she's making an effort.
Exactly. And our source also points out those inside jokes that couples create, those little references that only the two of you understand.
Oh, I love that. It's like your own secret language.
Yeah, it creates this feeling of intimacy and connection, like you're in on something special together.
Makes sense. So we've got proximity, touch, remembering details, inside jokes.
Yeah.
But we can't forget about social media.
Oh, yeah. Social media is huge these days. It adds a whole other dimension.
So how does a woman's behavior online fit into all of this? What should we be looking for?
Well, think about it. Social media is all about attention. Who are we choosing to follow? Whose posts are we liking and commenting on? Who are we tagging in memes? It shows where our interests lie.
Okay, so if she's always liking your posts, commenting on your photos, maybe even teasing you a bit in the comments section.
It could be a sign that she's trying to get your attention, like a way of saying, hey, I see you.
And it's not just how often she interacts, right? It's about the quality of the interaction too. Like if she's taking the time to leave a thoughtful comment or she responds to one of your stories.
You got it. It's that extra effort that really makes a difference.
So we're talking about likes, comments, maybe some direct messages. What about like those more public displays, like tagging each other in memes or bringing up an inside joke from your online chats when you're together in person?
Exactly. It's taking that online connection and weaving it into the real world.
Almost like she's proud to show that you two have a connection.
Right, and not just to the world, but to you specifically. It's a way of saying, I'm into you, and I'm not afraid to let people know.
Wow, that's pretty bold. It really seems like social media can be a powerful tool for flirting these days. This reminds me of something else our source mentioned, the protective stance.
Ah, yes, that's an interesting one.
So what does this protective stance look like?
Imagine you're at a party, and you're talking to another woman. Suddenly, the woman you're interested in shows up, and maybe she inserts herself into the conversation, or maybe just stands close by, keeping an eye on things.
So like a subtle way of marking her territory. I'm picturing a bodyguard, almost.
Well, it's not always about being possessive. It's more about communicating that she cares about the connection, that she's invested.
So it's not aggressive, but more about being present. being attentive.
Exactly. It's like a silent way of saying, I'm here and I'm not going anywhere.
I like that. So we've covered those initial physical cues like proximity and touch. Then we moved into those actions like remembering details and building a connection online. And now we have this protective stance. It's like we're peeling back the layers of a really complex puzzle.
And speaking of puzzles, our source mentions that shared rituals can be a big factor in building attraction too.
Oh, rituals. I love that idea. What kind of things are we talking about here?
Think about those little routines that couples develop, like meeting for coffee every Sunday, or sending goodnight texts every night, or even watching the same show at the same time, even if you're miles apart.
It's like creating those little moments of connection, building consistency, even if it's just small things.
Right. It's about building that sense of predictability and routine, which can be really comforting, especially early in a relationship.
It's like saying, hey, no matter what else is going on in my life, you're always there.
Well said. And remember, it doesn't have to be something big and elaborate. Even just sending a good morning text can be a powerful ritual.
It's about those little actions that show you care and you're consistent. And I imagine that as those connections get stronger, women might start to feel more comfortable, really opening up emotionally.
You're exactly right. Vulnerability is a huge part of building deeper connections. But I think we should pause here for now and come back to that idea of emotional openness in our next segment. And we're back, diving even deeper into these subtle signs. We were just talking about how women might start opening up emotionally as connections get stronger.
Right, and that feels like a whole different level. I mean, it's one thing to notice someone standing close to you or remembering your favorite coffee, but when they start sharing their feelings, that's pretty personal.
It is, and it shows a lot of trust. Think about it. When a woman starts to share her hopes, her fears, her dreams, maybe even some past experiences that have shaped her, she's letting you see a very vulnerable side of herself.
It's like she's inviting you into her world, right? But I guess I'm wondering, why is that such a strong sign of romantic interest? Couldn't she just be looking for a friend to confide in?
Of course, vulnerability can definitely be part of friendships too. But if she consistently chooses to open up to you, especially about things that are really important to her, it often means she wants something more than friendship.
So it's about the context, how often she does it, and how deep she's willing to go.
Right. It's like she's saying, I feel safe with you, and I want you to know the real me, even the parts that aren't perfect.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess it goes beyond just her sharing, right? It's about how she reacts to your vulnerability, too.
Exactly. Does she celebrate your successes, even the small ones? Does she offer support when you're struggling?
It's about having someone in your corner rooting for you.
Right. And of course, friends do that too. But when there's a romantic interest, there's often this extra level of empathy. She really wants to help you overcome challenges.
So it's like she's not just listening, she's actively trying to be part of the solution.
Yeah, and that active involvement can go beyond just emotional support. Our source also talks about how significant it is when a woman shares her personal spaces with you, like a favorite park, a bookstore she loves, even her own home.
Oh yeah, that feels like a big step, letting someone into your personal space.
It is. Think about it. The places we spend time in, they reflect who we are, our tastes, our memories. So when she invites you into those spaces, it's like she's sharing a part of herself.
It's like saying, this place is special to me, and I want you to be part of it.
Exactly. And all of these shared experiences, whether it's a big adventure or just hanging out at home, they all contribute to building intimacy.
It's really fascinating how all of these little things connect. So we've got body language, actions, emotional vulnerability, even shared spaces. Is there anything else we've missed? Anything else that might signal a woman's interest?
Well, our source points out something that's really key. Actions speak louder than words.
Ah, yes, the classic wisdom. But what does that mean in this context?
It's about those small acts of service, those things that show you're thinking about someone and genuinely care.
Okay, give me some examples.
Like imagine you've had a long day and she surprises you with your favorite takeout. Or you mention you're out of coffee and she picks some up for you. Or you're feeling sick and she brings you soup and just hangs out with you.
It's those little things that show you care, those actions that say, I'm here for you.
Right, it's showing you, not just telling you. And it doesn't have to be some big, expensive gesture. It's the thoughtfulness that matters.
I'm noticing a theme here. Consistency. Whether it's communication, emotional support, those little acts of kindness. It's about showing up for someone in a way that feels genuine and consistent over time.
That's a great observation. Attraction isn't just about the initial spark, it's about building that foundation of trust and mutual care.
So we shouldn't be trying to overanalyze every little glance or text message. It's more about seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly. Pay attention to those patterns, those repeated behaviors. It can give you a much better sense of someone's true intentions.
This is so insightful. I'm already starting to look at my own interactions in a totally different way.
That's great to hear. But as with anything, it's important to use this knowledge responsibly. Don't overthink it, and don't jump to conclusions based on just one or two things.
Right, we're not saying to obsess over every little detail.
Exactly. Communication is always key. If you're unsure about someone's feelings, the best thing you can do is just talk to them.
So important to remember that. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what's the main takeaway for our listeners?
I think the biggest thing is women have so many subtle ways of expressing interest, and being aware of these patterns can really help you understand relationships better. It's like having a decoder ring for human behavior.
Love that analogy.
Yeah.
But as we said, don't overthink it.
Just be present, be observant, and let your intuition guide you.
That's a great way to put it. So to everyone listening, pay attention to those little things, those unspoken signals. You never know what you might discover.
And on that note, I think it's time to move on to our final segment, where we'll leave you with something to ponder as you continue to explore this topic on your own.
All right, back for the final part of our deep dive into, well, how women show interest. We've covered a lot of ground. It's pretty amazing how much we communicate without even realizing it.
It is. But as we wrap up, I wanted to kind of flip things around a bit, give you something else to consider.
Ooh, I like that. What you got?
Well, we've been talking about all these signs from women, but what about men? What about the ways they show interest?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
Oh.
I mean, do men use the same kind of tactics?
Yeah.
Or are there things they do that are totally different?
Exactly. It's like a whole other layer to explore. I mean, think about it. Do guys use touch and proximity in the same way? Do they create those little rituals? Do they open up their personal spaces the same way?
I'm already thinking about all the guys I know trying to figure out if I've missed any clues. This could change everything.
And that's kind of the point, right? It's about becoming more aware, more attuned to all these subtle things that are happening around us all the time.
Like we said, it's like having a new lens to see the world through.
Exactly.
So, to everyone listening, don't just focus on those big, obvious signs. Pay attention to the little things, those unspoken signals.
You never know what you might discover.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.